日本時間6月11日、ドジャースの大谷翔平選手が敵地でのパイレーツ戦に1番投手兼 DH で先発出場をしました。この日の大谷選手は投手として7回のマウンドまで登板。右手中指から出血しながら力投を続け、6回3分の2を投げて6安打4失点、防御率は 1.06 となりました。規定投球回到達まであと1アウト届かず、7勝目の権利を持って降板しましたが、8回に救援陣が逆転を許し白星は消滅。それでも大谷選手は諦めず、9回の打席で3試合ぶりとなる12号ツーランを放ちました。また、この試合後には米メディアが大谷選手の防御率をめぐり騒然とした反応を見せており、6月10日になってようやく1を超えたという驚きの声が相次ぎました。また、人気番組の 97.1 ザ・ファン LA では、ドジャースの驚異的な強さの秘密が語られました。巨額の補強を続けながら、なぜ世界最強の若手育成組織を維持できるのか。専門家が明かす他球団が真似できないドジャースだけの独自のスカウト戦略と驚きのトレード裏話をどこよりも分かりやすく徹底解説しています。ここからはその様子を字幕付きでご紹介します。
On the MLB draft on MLB Farm Systems, Keith Law is joining us right now, obviously senior baseball writer for The Athletic. Keith, thank you for joining DMAC and I, man. Appreciate you. Really excited to visit with you about this Dodgers farm system.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's start here. Maybe for people who don't know or don't sort of follow the ins and outs of how you build a farm system, how have the Dodgers been able to build a world-class farm system while still spending the money they do and obviously having a world-class Major League Baseball team? What is their secret sauce?
Well, I mean, you're going to probably get different answers from different people. In my opinion, it is that they're an exceptionally well-run organization across the board that has always, at least since Andrew Friedman came on, adopted the best available tools, data, et cetera, on the analytical side, while also maintaining a strong emphasis on traditional scouting. And so if you talk to anybody in the Dodgers organization, no matter where they are, you will hear them talk about not just the area they work in, but how much contact they have with other departments, scouting, and that's amateur, pro, and international. It's player development, it's R&D, the major league coaching staff. And so they are really integrated across all departments, and their employees feel really empowered. And Andrew brought that from the Rays. He established that culture with the Rays. It is still there. Talk to anybody on the Rays side, they all feel like they're really part of a whole, they're working together, and that their input means something. And the Dodgers people feel the same way, and that's why they're able to pull off trades for guys who aren't respected or aren't valued in other farm systems and then come over to the Dodgers and suddenly become elite prospects.
And Keith, you see guys like Tibbs and Sirota, River Ryan, even Zaire Hope, guys that were not drafted by the Dodgers, but they were acquired via trades. How important do you think that is to their success, and is when to trade a guy like a Michael Busch or trade a guy like a Gavin Lux so you can replenish that farm system knowing you're not going to be drafting at the top of the draft because of how much success they're having year to year?
Right, and they're also not trading veterans typically for prospects. I mean, Busch was still a prospect at the time. They're not trading veterans for prospects very often like a rebuilding team would. You look at the Dodgers farm system, and it resembles that of a rebuilding team. They have a lot of top prospects they acquired in trade, but they're not doing that. They're not trading their stars to restock. They tend to either identify where they have surplus, and that's really what Michael Busch was. I never heard a Dodger person say one negative thing about Michael Busch as a player or as a person, but they didn't need him. They recognized that they didn't really have a spot for him and felt that it was a good time to cash him in. And they had really strong amateur reports on Zaire Hope in particular, who was by far the lesser known and less valued of the two prospects they got in the trade, but now he's the better one. You know, in the case of Gavin Lux, I think it was a little bit of the same. Now, Lux obviously had a lot of injury problems, and he'd sort of been pushed out by other players. But I think they also looked at him and said, he's not getting better here. We cannot get more out of Gavin Lux. All of the things we do well with players, we tried, and he hasn't gotten better. So maybe he'll get better somewhere else. But as long as he's maxed out here, it makes sense to move him.
Talking to Keith Law, senior baseball writer for The Athletic here on DMAC and writer. Keith, the Dodgers talk a lot about, in fact, Dave Roberts was on the morning show here on 97.1 The Fan this morning, and he talked about player development and the Dodgers' belief that they have an approach that brings out the best in players at every level. When you have a player development system that has a proven track record, like the Dodgers believe they do, does it impact how you draft, who you draft, what you look for when it's not just talent, but the belief that you can get the best out of talent?
Yes, as it should. I mean, I would put it the other way too. If you think, hey, we're not good at developing high school pitchers, there's a pretty good answer to that, and that is don't take them. I mean, it drives me absolutely up the wall when I see teams, and there are still teams that do it, draft players I know they can't help. Like, you have done this before. You have selected from that particular bucket, and you know you can't make guys better. The flip side is when you know you are good, like, for example, the Dodgers, I think it's not much of a secret that when they find hitters with good command of the strike zone who hit the ball hard, they believe they can optimize swings to get those guys to hit for more power. Will Smith is the absolute ultimate example of them doing that in the draft. They did it in trades with Muncy, with Chris Taylor. I mean, that's really what's happened with James Tibbs, although if you ask Dodgers people, they almost disclaim credit. They said, we just told him to swing the way he did at Florida State. But that is also getting him back to the sort of more optimized swing, and he had the characteristics that they like in hitters. So they know what they're good at, and they target those types of guys. That's also why a couple of years ago when they took Kendall George, who unfortunately suffered a pretty serious injury recently, but I was very skeptical because that's not the type of player they've had a lot of success with. A little slap hitter who could really run, but did not have that kind of zone control or hard contact characteristics that point to success with sort of the Dodgers way.
And Keith, we look at this farm system and the prospects. The big question with the Dodgers is always how many of these guys are going to make it to the big league level and actually have a role for this team, and how many of these guys will be included in trades just because they have the ability to acquire talent through free agency. There's a lot of talent. A lot of guys are blocked. You mentioned a guy like a James Tibbs who they got last year in the Dustin May trade. When you look at the value of these guys, how sensitive do you think the Dodgers are to just the increasing value of these guys and knowing when to trade them at the right time for a win-now piece?
I think they're very aware of the fact that they don't have a lot of playing time to go around, particularly for position players. At the same time, I also think they're very aware you're always one injury away from needing Tibbs, Sirota, whoever you decide is next at any particular position. So I don't think they're going to make a deal that leaves them exposed if somebody should get hurt. That said, I kind of feel like one of those guys is probably moving at the trade deadline this year, unless the Dodgers just say we don't really need anything, in which case they'll just keep them. Or, everyone wants them to get Tariq Skubal. I would also say every team in baseball that's trying to contend should be trying to get to Tariq Skubal, assuming Skubal is on the trade block at the deadline. The Dodgers are as well positioned as anyone to go get him, and they can offer probably two pretty elite position player prospects who aren't that far from contributing in the majors, which I think is going to be big for Detroit. And there aren't many other clubs that can match that. And that is part of the sort of beauty of this Dodgers approach, is that it has set them up to not just replenish the major league club, but to make trades, because not only do they have more good prospects than most other teams, but a lot of those guys are close to being able to help in the majors.
And Keith, you know the prospect world as good as anyone, especially the Dodgers, and you just look at those guys, the Quinteros, the DePaulas, the Sirotas. You mentioned a trade possibility for a Tariq Skubal. There's this myth out there that, the Dodgers would have to empty the farm for a Tariq Skubal, even though Skubal would be a rental for the remainder of this season. If the Dodgers were to go out there and get Skubal, maybe include two of their top 100 prospects, do you still think that this team can get him without emptying the farm?
They wouldn't be emptying the farm because there's too much, right? There's no trade they're making that leaves them with a below-average farm system. They have too many guys. I mean, there's a whole second wave of guys coming beyond just the guys that are on, I did a top 50 update. I think is why Doug reached out in the first place, that had 5 Dodgers on it, or 6 Dodgers on it, I think, in total. And even if you trade 3 of those guys, this is still going to be an above-average farm system, because there's a whole wave of guys in A-ball who are also really exciting, mostly very high-ceiling prospects who could just step in and sort of replace the traded guys at AA or AAA, either later this year or by the start of next year.
Keith Law here on the show, DMAC and Rider 97.1 The Fan. Keith, let's say that the Dodgers have every prospect that right now for this question that I'm going to ask you. And who is, and you noted your top 50 MLB prospects story at The Athletic, which is outstanding. And for people that haven't read it, you should go over. You should subscribe to The Athletic like Doug and I do. Follow Keith Law's work. It's really, really good. If one prospect in their system were going to be you had to pick one guy that you think would be a long-term major league outfielder for the Dodgers, you had to pick one prospect, who would be your best bet?
I think it's Quintero, and I think the Dodgers would say the same thing. He hasn't had a great start on paper, but he is still hitting the ball extremely hard. He's still making great swing decisions. I think the biggest issue for him is he just needs to swing the bat more, and that is a lot easier to fix than, say, a guy who just cannot hit breaking stuff, for example, or a guy who's constantly chasing pitches out of the zone. He may also have a chance to stick in center, which obviously boosts his value substantially. If he has to move to a corner, I think he'll be an asset on defense in either spot. But ultimately, I just have a tremendous amount of faith in the bat, and so do the Dodgers. As long as the Dodgers feel that way, then I am inclined to agree with them, because they do have a lot of pretty high-impact outfield prospects, or potentially high-impact prospects. And the fact that they seem to see Quintero as the best of the group just further reinforces my belief in the same.
Yeah, Quintero higher than DePaula. Really, for the last couple of years, DePaula has been the guy that most label as the Dodgers prospect that has the highest chances of becoming a superstar. What is your outlook on DePaula, and do you think the Dodgers would be comfortable moving DePaula for the right player, whether it be a Skubal or someone bigger down the line?
I think they would, because it would have to be for an elite player. But DePaula is either a bad corner outfielder or he's a first baseman, or I guess possibly a DH. And that's a problem. That just limits your flexibility. It gets fewer places where the Dodgers could put him. It doesn't make him a bad prospect, because the bat could really be special. It's on-base skills and real power. And he does seem to make enough contact that he probably is going to be able to hit for some average too. But the fact that there's no defensive value, and that really limits his flexibility, or the Dodgers' flexibility in using him somewhere, I think makes it a little more likely that he's someone who's available in trade than Quintero, or than one of their, one of the second tier up the middle prospects, who again just gives them more possibilities for working them into a major league roster.
Keith Law here on the show, DMAC and Ryder. Keith, my partner, is very excited about the prospect of the Dodgers adding some superstar help via trade, if possible. And so that's somewhat the context of this question. To what degree do you and or the Dodgers view River Ryan as a can't-miss superstar who should be a part of the Dodgers rotation, or a really important piece in a trade that could bring in a name right now?
Well, I mean, the problem with Ryan is, for folks who don't know, he's 27. It's going to be 28, I think, before this calendar year is out. So he's really old for a prospect, because he only became a full-time pitcher at age 22, and then lost a year with Tommy John surgery. He previously had shoulder soreness, didn't have surgery, but it was, it was a long way back. And so he doesn't have a lot of innings behind him, certainly. He doesn't have a lot of experience. And I don't know that you can look at him and say he's going to be a 180-inning starter for us for the next 5 years. Stuff-wise, it's about as good as anyone in the minors. I mean, I have him ranked as one of the top 4 or 5 pitching prospects anywhere in baseball, despite the age. So I think he can step in right now, and because he does have elite stuff, velocity, spin, feel, command, everything you want is there except a track record of health. So to me, that is a guy you probably want to keep, particularly if other teams look at him and say, we really like him, but we're worried he's not that durable, so we're going to give you 80 cents on the dollar. At that point, I say, absolutely not. We're keeping him. He's going to be in our rotation in August and September. And that is my expectation. From having talked to them in the past, they view River Ryan extremely highly. I don't know, maybe not quite as highly as I do, but I think they have a pretty good understanding of what they have.
Yeah, I was just about to say, no one is higher than River Ryan than you, Keith Law. You've talked about him for years. You've had him as one of your top prospects, and he's come back from the surgery. The velocity is up. He's getting built up, but we haven't seen him in the show yet. We haven't seen him yet since come back from that injury. Do you think that's just because they're trying to front load some of that rest and allow him to build up because he hasn't gone more than 100 innings outside of one season in his career? Just what's your outlook of him this year based on what you've seen, and are you higher now than ever on River Ryan?
Well, I'm higher than I've been while he was hurt, right? He was out for basically 2 years. Before that, I thought he was a top 25 prospect in the sport. Right now, I think he's a top 25 prospect in the sport. I imagine that they're controlling his workload. One, obviously just not, want too much too soon, but also they are trying to make sure that he's available to them in the second half of the season. Obviously, if you're running the Dodgers and you have any player who you think might be able to help the major league club, you are planning for a 7-month season, not a 6-month season. And that is particularly true, I think, in Ryan's case, where maybe he comes up and he's a reliever just for the short term because maybe they don't have a need in the rotation. Maybe they trade for Tariq Skubal and they don't have to put Ryan in the rotation. Great. He can still help in a bullpen role. He can help in a mop-up role or an innings role where he's way more effective than the 11th or 12th man on just about anybody else's staff.
Keith Law, for Dodgers fans who follow the farm system to a degree, but maybe stop after your top 50 prospects list, are there any diamonds in the rough or guys at the lower levels of the minors that you or the Dodgers feel like you'll be writing about, talking about in a year or two or three or four?
I mean, I'll mention two real quick. There's Charles Davalon, who just missed my top 50. He was playing left field at Arkansas. He only spent 1 year there as a transfer. He's a Canadian kid. There wasn't a ton of track record. I remember going into Arkansas. I was supposed to be focusing on a different player. I said, can we talk about the left fielder? Because he's pretty good. And they put him in center, and all I've heard is he looks like a complete natural out there. I would like to see them move him up to Double-A sooner just to kind of get a better sense on how advanced the bat is, but he's really good. And, I mean, he's a guy they're going to get hit on a lot in trades this year. The other one is a bit more of a personal favorite just because I've always loved the swing. Is Emil Morales, who they signed out of the Canary Islands in Spain, which is obviously pretty unusual to begin with. His command of the strike zone is not as far along as basically any of the other guys we've talked about, and that is the difference. That's why he's not, say, a top 50 prospect right now. He hits so well in low A. Despite that, they bumped him up to high A, maybe not prematurely, but quickly this year, I think, to continue challenging him. And in 2.5 weeks there, he scuffled a little bit. He's only 19. He doesn't have quite the amateur track record of players signed out of the Dominican or out of Venezuela, but it is an amazing swing. He is a big physical kid who hits it really hard. You are betting a little bit on the development of the strike zone judgment and some of the swing decisions, but given how far he is now and where he's come from, I believe that he's going to get there. It just may take more time.
Yeah, I was going to follow up on Emil Morales because the Dodgers, really, we look at the infield, haven't developed many infield prospects that have played a big role. Mookie is playing shortstop, and that just kind of came on a whim after Gavin Lux struggled to do it a couple years ago. Do you see that as the long-term play for the Dodgers and Morales? Do you see him as a future big league shortstop?
He is not a shortstop for me. He's mostly playing about three-quarters shortstop, about a quarter of the time at third base. He's going to end up at third. He's too big. He is not agile enough to play short. He'll still play there in the minors for a while, but third base is his ultimate home.
Keith Law, this was awesome. We appreciate the time. Love the work you do at The Athletic. For people who have not read it yet, you should go look at the updated top 50 MLB prospects that Keith put together over at The Athletic. It's really good, very comprehensive, and it has a lot of Dodgers names, so it'll make you very happy to read it. Keith, thank you very much, man. Hope you can join us again. That was great stuff.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Keith.
Keith Law, hanging on the show.
いかがでしたでしょうか。このチャンネルでは MLB で活躍する日本人選手の最新情報を中心にどこよりも熱くお届けします。専門家の分析や選手の生の声で観戦がさらに面白くなりましたら、ぜひチャンネル登録と高評価をお願いいたします。皆様の応援が励みになります。今回も最後までご視聴いただき本当にありがとうございました。それではまた次の動画でお会いしましょう。